Hey folks, this is Riker with the Gaming News Wrap-Up video where we discuss the happenings of the week. This week's topics include the game engine Unity, basically trying to self-destruct, Diablo 4 continuing to get XP buffs, Final Fantasy XVI's destructive effect on Square Enix, and more. As always, discussion timestamps can be found in the description below, but right before you skip ahead, just a quick reminder to ring that sub notification bell to be alerted to new Saturday episodes and stay up to date with gaming news highlights. Now before I move on, just a quick word from this video's sponsor, NordVPN. A VPN is an important tool for keeping your data secure and encrypted on the internet, and I don't dare connect to public Wi-Fi without first enabling my VPN. I've been doing a lot of travel lately, been in a lot of airports, and whether I'm on my phone or my laptop, I turn on my protection before I connect to that public Wi-Fi, because you just never know who could be snooping around trying to steal your personal data, because anyone could just take their phone, turn on a hotspot, and name it airport free Wi-Fi. So turn on your VPN, and now your data is getting encrypted before it's going out. You can also use a VPN to get around region block content by picking a server in a different country, and NordVPN has thousands of servers worldwide. And it's so user-friendly that you're basically one click away from hiding your IP or browsing the web from a different country. And one account lets you connect up to 6 devices, be they computers, phones, tablets, you name it. So take control of your internet experience today with NordVPN. Right now you can get a 2-year plan at a huge discount plus 4 additional months for free when you use my link nordvpn.com/Riker. It's risk-free with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. That's nordvpn.com/RHYKKER, or click the link in the description below. Kicking things off with Diablo news, beginning with Diablo 4. This week saw the release of patch 1.1.4, which increased the total experience bonus from the Urn of Aggression, that's the season blessing, from 8% to 20%. Basically, as part of your season journey, you earn rewards which you can then apply towards getting an XP buff. Very nice in principle, and having that bonus turn from 8% to 20%, wow, that seems amazing. 20% more XP. The trouble is that this bonus XP is additive and not multiplicative, meaning at endgame, you're not getting 20% more XP. You're getting 20% more XP on top of all the other multipliers you have. You see, World Tier 4 already gives you a 200% XP bonus. So that means with the plus 8%, instead of getting plus 200% XP, you're getting plus 208% XP, which is really just a few percentage practical increase. In essence, at endgame, this doesn't help you a whole lot in getting to level 100. So this bonus going from 8% to 20%, again, seems like a big increase, but because it's still additive, functionally, this is still a marginal increase that is barely felt at the endgame. What this does do, however, is when you are leveling an alt, now you get 20% more XP in a time where you don't have other multipliers. So now that 20% XP is actually 20% XP. So yeah, you're able to level alts faster. However, the dev notes said we increased the total experience bonus of Urn of Aggression to make the season blessing more impactful and to help players seeking level 100 get there a little faster. I mean, they're not wrong. It is a little faster, but I mean, it makes more sense as a bonus to help leveling alts faster. If the idea was to help get to level 100 faster, there seems to be other better ways to go about that. And a few days later, this same week, we saw another patch come out with another bonus to XP acquisition. They've increased the experience gains for killing monsters in World Tiers 3 and 4. It's a 5% buff in World Tier 3 and a 15% buff in World Tier 4. Now at this point it's not clear whether this is additive or multiplicative. I'm actually inclined to think this might be multiplicative because it's not just baseline XP, it's specifically XP for killing monsters. So this won't affect quest XP, for instance. It doesn't seem to exist as just a global multiplier on top of all your XP acquisition. So if this is actually a 15% multiplicative bonus in World Tier 4, then yeah, that is a significant bump to help players plug along towards level 100. For argument's sake, if it takes 50 hours to reach level 100, then 15% faster XP for monsters specifically might save you about maybe 7 hours. So that's, you know, a couple days of grinding potentially. But back when we were looking at that additive bonus, that come out to like maybe an hour saved. Overall, I think there needs to be in-game somehow greater clarity for players to understand the effects of XP bonuses. For instance, popping those potions that give you 5% bonus XP, that's additive. I've stopped bothering. 5% more XP at World Tier 4? It just, for me, is not worth the time of even having to think about the potion. That's not advice, by the way. It's still worth popping the potion. I mean, even if it just saves you minutes in the end, it's still something. Then in some quick Diablo 2 news, we got word of when the next season is beginning, the ladder reset. That's going to be on September 28th at 2 p.m. Pacific. There are, however, no changes, no balance changes, no new content, nothing new for this new season. We're going back to basically Diablo 2 maintenance mode that we've had over the past 10-ish, 15 years. And while there's no confirmation from Blizzard of this, it does seem like I would not expect any more new content to Diablo 2 Resurrected ever again. Might it still happen? Sure, but at this point, I think the precedent is being set. There's no further communication about it. That seems this is going to be the state of D2R, with just ladder resets every few months. But thankfully, the Diablo 3 situation is looking a little more bright. We're actually getting a great season that just launched yesterday. Yeah. Time traveling video editing. Season 29 launched on Friday the 15th. It introduces some balance changes that make a couple old builds rise. The Chicken Dock is now one of the top 10 builds of the season. You can check out a full guide on Chicken Dock over here. Very fun build. We have a full tier list of the best builds of the season over here if you want to dive on in. And one very interesting thing about Season 29 is that they are introducing a Paragon cap. Technically, there's no cap. You keep gaining Paragon levels, but your Paragon points stop at Paragon 800. So no more infinitely escalating power. This does, however, mean that for a lot of people, the season will likely be shorter than in the past, because some people will feel disincentivized from continuing on after Paragon 800, which means, hey, if you're looking for just a quick bit of fun in D3, I always have fun diving in to a new season when D3 starts. If this is going to be a shorter season than usual, why not give it a go? Dive back into D3, see what's changed. The season theme as well is pretty cool. The Visions of Enmity create these strange portals throughout the world. It can make your leveling experience different, at least on PTR. I was running into these portals all the time outside of Rifts, and they're these cool small maps that include locations from the campaign that you never see in adventure mode anymore, with a whole bunch of different boss fights and weird fights and crazy rewards. Do check it out. It's a good bit of fun. And that takes us into a major story of the week. Unity. Unity is a game engine that's been around for about 15 years. I think at present, something like 70+% of mobile games are built on Unity, but it's cross-platform. A lot of indie devs come to Unity because it's historically been a more affordable game engine to create content on. There's robust tutorials and libraries of pre-made assets so that you don't have to build things from scratch. Overall, it's just been a very approachable, welcoming, and inviting game engines for a lot of aspiring game devs, and ultimately it started to even make a splash in the AA and sometimes even the AAA scene. Unreal Engine has been in the AAA space the bigger name for a longer time. And of course, a lot of AAA devs make their own game engines from scratch as well. But Unity has allowed for a ton of indie devs to make a splash in the gaming scene. And this week, Unity made an announcement that's just so absolutely perplexingly bad. They announced a change to their pricing model that would start to go into effect in January, whereby people running games on Unity would be charged a fee per download of their game. Sorry, not per download, per install of their game. It would be 20 cents per install of their game. And the internet basically collectively lost its mind. There was so much outrage that basically the next day, Unity followed up with some extra stipulations that I guess improve things a bit. First off, they clarified that game demos won't get charged this fee. If your game is part of some kind of charity drive, you could inform them and you won't get charged this fee. They clarified that only installing the game for the first time on a device will get charged the fee, but if you're installing it on different computers or different devices, then you will get the additional fee. They clarified as well that if you're on the cheaper Unity plans, you'll only get charged this fee once you've reached 200,000 installs and $200,000 in revenue. And they said that they estimate that only about 10% of their users will end up having to pay this fee, all things considered. So while this clarification was good for some people, there's still problems. Sure, if you're a lone indie dev who's making no money, at least now you're not getting screwed over. But if you're like a serious little studio that's been plugging away at a game for a few years, reaching $200,000 in sales isn't too difficult to achieve, and it's not like a huge measure of success given what your expenses have been over your development period. And if you are a free-to-play game, all of a sudden, that's hurting a whole lot more. Overall, this entire fiasco has had the energy of the Scott's Tots episode of The Office, where Michael disappoints a bunch of college kids by making them believe he's giving them laptops, but in fact, he's just giving them laptop batteries. And then he adds,
Hold on, they're lithium.
Now, I haven't even added the final part of all this, where Unity also clarified that, oh, don't worry, if your game is on Game Pass or being distributed elsewhere, it's not you that's going to pay the fee, it's the distributor, Microsoft or Sony or Nintendo. And they seem to have not run this by Microsoft, Sony, and Nintendo beforehand. So how do you think the lawyers of Microsoft, Sony, and Nintendo are gonna feel when, oh, all of a sudden, yeah, retroactively, you're gonna have to pay a bunch of fees for all these games that you're distributing? That's gonna go over great. So many devs have spoken out against the change. The devs of Among Us have said that if this goes through, they're going to be changing game engine. The developers of Cult of the Lamb said that they'd be deleting their game on January 1st. They were just kidding, but a lot of people took them seriously, but it comes from a place of truth, of over the outrage. And a big core of the issue here is that it's not so easy to just be like, oh, we're gonna change from Unity to Unreal or Godot. Godot, by the way, is effectively the new Unity, a new game engine that's been rising up to be the more inviting option for indie devs and everything. So this will be the push, hopefully, for Godot to make it into the mainstream. But basically, this, without warning, I mean, I guess you can argue, well, they have a few months warning. Changing game engine isn't as simple as changing, like, distribution platform, which isn't super simple by itself, but it's not just deciding where you're selling your game. This is the skeleton of your game. Your whole game is built on this. If you've had a game in development for years, changing game engine is a monumental task. So this isn't just affecting new people who are going to come and begin to build their games on Unity. If you've had a game in development for years and you are like aiming for release in February, well, now you're screwed. Also, if you have an old game that's not really generating revenue anymore, imagine you're not in a position to be paying extra fees. Maybe you don't even develop games anymore, but you have some game from 5 years ago. Now you're actually encouraged to take down and delist your game rather than just leave it up for future generations to find. Like, imagine you have a free-to-play game with no monetization and like one day in the future you just get a bill out of nowhere from Unity. The developers of Slay the Spire called this action from Unity not only harmful but a violation of trust. For 2 years they've been working on a new game, in fact, but now they're also deciding to migrate game engine. And that trust is something that cannot easily be rebuilt. No matter what they walk back at this point, the fact that they can just so easily and without warning change a contract, they're clearly willing to do it. And once they're emboldened enough to do so, now users know what could potentially happen at literally any moment. This is definitely going to scare off a lot of game devs from jumping into Unity, and is going to cause a lot of existing devs to move away from it. The developer of Rust had a very angry blog post. He said, quote, "Unity has shown its power. We can see what they can and are willing to do. You can't unring that bell. It's our fault, all our faults. We sleepwalked into it. We had a ton of warnings. We should have been pressing the eject button when Unity IPO'd in 2020. What he's referring to is that in 2020, Unity became a publicly traded company. Therefore, You can buy stocks, therefore you are now at the mercy of shareholders, therefore you must continue to bring in revenue and increase profits to make the shareholders happy. Every single thing they've done since then has been the exact opposite of what was good for the engine. We had 10 years to make our own engine and never did. I'm sure a lot of game companies are feeling the same today. Let's not make the same mistake again. Rust 2 definitely won't be a Unity game. Oh, icing on top of the icing. Unity is also retiring their base lowest pay model. People who are current subscribers of that model will be grandfathered in to paying those same fees, but new subscribers will be forced to get the more expensive packages moving forward. So instead of $400 a year, $2,000 a year. Now, since 2014, Unity has been run by John Riccitiello, who was previously CEO of EA. This is the guy who, while at EA, wanted to introduce a microtransaction feature whereby if you're playing an FPS and you run out of ammo, with just a quick and simple microtransaction, you can pay money to reload your gun. He also literally called game devs idiots. He used the word idiots for not putting more microtransactions into their games. This is the guy that Unity decided to make their CEO. Now, some people are also pointing towards the fact that just last week, John Riccitiello sold 2,000 shares of Unity. The implication here being, oh, I know I'm about to make a very unpopular announcement that's gonna probably tank the share price. Let me sell some shares. That would be illegal and insider trading, and I am not accusing John Riccitiello or the other executives who have also been selling shares over the past few weeks. And in fairness, over the past year, Riccitiello has sold a total of 50,000 shares, so 2,000, not a whole lot in the big picture. It's all been part of a pattern of selling shares from all the executive team over the past year. Then onto some Starfield news. Sales of Xbox consoles have arisen with the launch of Starfield. Xbox Series S and X sales jumped 76% week on week, which is partially due to the launch of the new Xbox Series S 1TB edition, which accounted for 24% of all the Xbox consoles sold during that week. But even the standard Xbox Series X saw a 46% increase in sales thanks to the launch of Starfield. Remember, Starfield is an Xbox and PC exclusive. As a reminder, Starfield surpassed 6 million players. It's the biggest Bethesda game launch of all time. But Steam reviews aren't exactly amazing. At launch, Steam reviews were very positive, 88% positive. But now they've dropped down to mostly positive, with only 77% of reviews being positive. A common point I see repeated is that the start of Starfield is pretty slow, but once you get into it, it gets a lot better. I also think depending on what you are expecting to get from the game, you might enjoy it more or less. If you are looking for a super polished AAA experience, you're probably going to be more disappointed than if you're just sort of hoping for a nice Bethesda sandbox for modders to have fun in and just give the bare bones of toys for us to play with, even if there's some jank around the edges. I've only put a few hours into Starfield. I'm enjoying myself so far. I'm getting what I had hoped to get out of it. But I turn the question to you folks. Are you enjoying Starfield? What were you hoping to get out of it, and are you getting that? Now, speaking of modding, the game did get a small hotfix this week, but they also gave us a roadmap promising requested features were coming, including brightness and contrast controls, HDR calibration menu, a field of view slider so we don't have to do the modded trick to get that to work anymore, DLSS support, which is very big. Again, mods are pseudo adding that in the meantime. Ultra-wide support, and mod support should be on the way next year. Of course, there's already mods with the game, but when they say mod support, they mean actually giving players tools to build mods more easily. And this is the general trend with Bethesda games. It takes about 3 to 4 months before the creation kit, the modding tools for the game release. In other news, according to reports, Embracer may be looking to sell Gearbox, developer of Borderlands. Back in 2021, Embracer bought Gearbox for $1.4 billion. They've been buying up a bunch of game developers over the past few years, spending a lot of money. And just last month, Gearbox released Remnant 2, which was topping sales charts. So it's not like Gearbox is doing poorly. But apparently just a few months ago, a $2 billion deal with a Saudi-backed company fell through, and since then Embracer's basically been scrambling. They announced this restructuring plan, which saw the closure of Volition Studios, which we spoke about last week. That's the developers of Saints Row. That was a company that did have a couple bombs in succession, so it made sense for them to be cutting costs in a non-profitable branch. But now, as Gearbox being a branch that does see profit, it almost feels like they're trying to sell Gearbox at a profit to try to recoup some of that $2 billion. It's unclear how this might affect the other studios that Embracer now owns, including Eidos Montreal and Crystal Dynamics, who they bought from Square Enix for a steal of a deal of $300 million. That's $300 million to get the rights to Tomb Raider, to Deus Ex, to Thief. And speaking of Square Enix, they're not doing too hot either. Since the launch of Final Fantasy XVI, the company has lost almost $2 billion in value. The share price has fallen 28% since its peak in June, 2 days before Final Fantasy XVI launched. The share price has reached its low of the year. Now, back in August, Square Enix said that Final Fantasy XVI did not reach sales expectations, and they saw a 66% drop in profit. And Final Fantasy XVI is just the latest in a series of games that have not reached sales expectations for Square Enix. Babylon's Fall, Marvel's Avengers, Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy, Forspoken, the latest big one that did so poorly that they shut down the studio that made Forspoken. Overall, it feels like Square Enix doesn't know how to make money in the West anymore. That's partially why they were so eager to sell off Eidos and Crystal Dynamics. I do wonder what this cascade of disappointing sales figures are going to mean for the future of the games that Square Enix develops. And that's going to wrap up this week's video. But do be sure to check out last week's video in which we discussed how Diablo 4 is getting yearly expansions that we estimate will cost $40. Thanks for watching. Special thanks to my Twitch, Patreon, and YouTube supporters for making these videos possible. If you enjoyed this video, please share it, check out these other videos, and subscribe to join Riker's Raiders for more gaming content.